Please be seated. There is nowhere on this earth where hearts are so pure, where communities are so shaped by love, where the economy is so oriented to justice, or where the politics are so intent on peace that the devil doesn't find his way in. No human being, no human relationship, and no human system operates entirely in the blazing, blinding light of the love of God. Among people who are loving and faithful and just, thanks be to God, you will find courageous resistance. You will find inspiring resistance. You may even find effective resistance to demons. But you will find demons. And so we yearn for the mountaintop. It's been said that life presents each of us again and again with the choice between a cold heart and a broken heart. And so maybe the chronically cold-hearted don't feel the pull to the mountaintop. But the rest of us, many Christians, alongside followers of every great faith tradition, and fellow travelers whose aching desire for justice and peace is not connected to anything that they might describe as faith. Among those, the rest of us, the brokenhearted, we keep trying to get to the mountaintop. And just like Peter, when we are unaccountably blessed by God's invitation to spend a few fleeting moments there, we're tempted to believe that we can stay, that we have found the pure place, the happy place, the peaceful place. And often enough, instead of erupting in broken-hearted gratitude that God has led us here, despite our foolishness and our sin, we congratulate ourselves that by our cleverness, by our moral virtue, by our perseverance, or by our good judgment in following the right path, or following the right teacher, or following the right religion up that mountain, we have somehow managed to elude the demons once and for all, and that here it is on earth as it is in heaven. Jesus cannot stand that conclusion. And neither can Luke, because they both know that when we experience a moment of serenity, a vision of divine peace, a soothing, inspiring, rejuvenating manifestation of God's near presence with us, the only worthy fruit of that experience is to use the strength we derive from it to take the fight to the next demon. After all, when Jesus and Peter and James and John were on that mountaintop, there was a boy down in the crowd below being convulsed by his demon. And there may be no greater blasphemy than to declare, while some other beloved child of God is being assaulted by demons, that I have found heaven on earth, and therefore I intend to stay here. Which raises for me some particular questions this week. As tanks rumble, bombs fall, and bullets fly in Ukraine, how far have I gone in retreating to the mountaintop of personal safety? How far has this country gone in retreating to the mountaintop of prosperity and convenience that liberal democracy has given us access to? And how far has the community of nations, particularly the community of liberal democracies, succumbed to the temptation to believe that we can just stay safely on our mountaintop, that the road up that mountain leads only one way, that we'll never be dragged down it, or that whatever happens down below, it is good for us to be here. We'll stay. Maybe that's not quite fair. I'm not sure. Maybe we're not so smug on our mountaintop. Maybe we're more like the disciples who have already come down, essentially dragged down off the mountaintop because Jesus said it's time to go. And maybe now we're down below again, amidst the noise and the dirt and the chaos of the crowd, and we are trying to cast out the demon. But maybe like the disciples, we're failing. They couldn't do it. And what kind of faith in the Prince of Peace would it take to rebuke the authoritarian demons of violence and repression that convulse the innocent as we sit here this morning? Now, I know, if I'm honest, that the visceral horror I feel about Ukraine is partly because of the relative prosperity of Ukrainians, partly because of the way that their lifestyle, their clothes, even their race makes them more relatable to me and to many Americans than are some of the world's many beloved, afflicted. I know that's true, and yet I also know it is not just that superficial affinity that makes this conflict and its misery stand out from others. I think it's because on some level I had succumbed to the temptation to believe that those of us who had reached that mountaintop of civil society and liberal democracy, Ukrainians included, would be safe on that mountaintop from the forces of authoritarian violence. Since the dawn of liberal democracy, some have faltered, some have failed, but they have rarely been crushed from the outside by empire. The story of the people of God from long before the time of Jesus is the story of people called to resist, oppose, subvert, and undermine the forces of empire. And yet, we are beset again by those demons. The boy's father tells Jesus when he arrives, "I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not." This week, it's hard to believe that there are not similar prayers on the hearts and lips of terrified people in Ukraine, and maybe on the hearts, probably not so much the lips, of some of the Russian soldiers who have been hurled into this conflict like fuel for the fire. Cannot the disciples of liberal democracy cast out this demon that is torturing us, this demon that convulses us and throws us to the ground? So on his way, after the disciples have failed, Jesus is on his way. They go to get him, and he makes this remark: "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I bear with you?" And there is a well-regarded interpretation of this troubling and peculiar remark that holds that Jesus' frustration has to do with the fact that the disciples are somehow not yet ready, not yet equipped, not yet strong enough to take over the mission that he will soon have to leave to them. Here's Jesus embarking from that mountaintop on his last one-way trip to Jerusalem, and here are the disciples not yet ready to take up the work. In Christ, God breaks through into human times, into our times, into times of violence and conflict, and teaches us, the disciples, to pray that God's will might be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then Jesus leads his disciples toward Jerusalem, where for a few ghastly days it is in heaven as it is on earth. and the demons of this world seem to notch a victory against the God of love. And along the way, Jesus scowls at his disciples. Jesus scowls at us. How long? How long must I bear with you until you take up my work of peace? And we cry back with the people of Ukraine, with the father of the demon-afflicted child, with those who suffer in every part of the world. Jesus, where is Jesus? Come quickly. Our faith tells us that even in moments where the forces of sin and death appear to be triumphant, that those moments are fleeting, and that the victory of the God of love is eternal. Our faith tells us that Jesus is coming and that he will cast out the demon. Come quickly, Prince of Peace. Come quickly.